So what I'll cover today is the economics of audience intelligence. So what it basically, okay, can I just check this? Ah, okay. So I don't know how many of you guys followed Raoul Paul yesterday. So I wanted to just hint a little bit about economic singularity to start with. And then I'll talk a little bit about the fundamental and transformative shift, which is happening in financial access. That's the next one. Then I talk a little bit about the scalable gatekeeping that we are good at. So that's what I'll talk to you about. And then about efficiency, fundamental redesign, and scaling. And then the final one that I will finish off is with the triumvirate of intelligence, distribution, and content. So what does this mean, right? So economic singularity, because things have been changing. I know a few of you guys can recognize these names, right? So just quick show of hands if you guys recognize who these guys are. So guess one person. Okay. Maybe you were following Raul's presentation yesterday. Okay. Excellent. So the little context to this, right? So what are we looking at from an economic singularity standpoint, both in terms of earnings and in terms of a culmination point, right, between what we are and what AI could do for us. So a little snippet from that essay. This is an iconic essay, but everybody should have known by now. If you're not, please go ahead and start reading about it. The speculations concerning the first intelligent machine. The idea is about intelligence explosion, right? So the intelligence explosion is the right context which is happening today. I don't want to be exaggerating in any way, but I'm trying to make a connection here to how is this going to change financial access to people. So now the problem is it's not the question of or intelligence, but it's a question of opportunity and making sure that we actually uplift the downtrodden in terms of having the right financial access for them, right? So that's where I just wanted to set a context here. John von Neumann, I.J. Good, Werner Winge, and Ray Kurzweil, and whatnot, right? So there are quite a few people who've been working on this context. Now with this, so what's the fundamental and the transformative platform shift which has happened in financial access, and why is people like us relevant at this point in time, right? So that's the whole idea behind this. So yeah, so tech industry, everybody knows this. So we've got, it moves in the tectonic sort of platform shifts from time to time, right? 10, 15 years, you have new things, mainframe species, web, open source, smartphones to generative AI and whatnot. Things are changing. What does that mean for financial access? And I've spent all my time in financial services, right? So things change. I always try to make a connection with how do I get sure that the financial access is better for these people. So now, how is value captured when it comes to the platform shift, right? Yes, if a generative AI is the new platform, this is the pattern of which how a new platform will work, right? For example, if it's an incumbent in terms of a bank, I will make it as a new feature. I'm a startup. I used to unbundle, rebundle, whatnot, right? Sometimes you end up changing the nature of the market. So now we are at that stage where you could possibly change the nature of the market. That's where you are, right? So now, so this platform shifts. It tends to change everything else. What I mean by that, again, is new kind of building blocks. It can go further, right, than what people can expect. There's some examples here. Of course, SQLs, they make arbitrary data queries easier. Then you basically led to a just-in-time supply chains for us. We put the multi-touch and macOS in your phone. What does it mean? Uber, Instagram, whatnot, right? 5 billion people now online. So we now made a thing that can predict your next word, next action, or how good you are as a customer and whatnot. So what can emerge out of it? So that's big question mark, right? Big question mark. There's a lot of white spaces which is emerging. The point now is, with this, how is it going to make lives different in the global south in terms of financial access that it could actually bring to the table? So that's the bigger question for all of us. So with this, we sort of came up with this framework. So it is driven by three things. One, ecosystem-driven financial access. Two, service-oriented nature. Again, it's motivated through consumer behavior. When I mean consumer behavior, what are we talking here, right? So people's earnings patterns have changed right now. They're not earning anymore monthly, right? People are earning daily, hourly, per minute, per second, whatnot, right? Things have changed. With that, is what is the financial access that we are providing? What's the sort of scoring that we could actually do? What's the dynamic nature of the credit bureau that we could bring to context? So that's the bigger picture that we're looking at. Last but not least, again, the experience-driven there. So what I talk a little bit about the data domination. So essentially, that's creating a lot of opportunity for us when it comes to audience intelligence. That's achieved scale. Second one is changing consumer motivation. I just mentioned a little bit about that. Business models have changed a little bit. And then the most important part is the slingshot opportunities, right? When I mean slingshot opportunities, there are some really good slingshot opportunities where we could enable financial access through AI. So that's the bigger one. And whoever has that hold on this intelligence ecosystem can sort of orchestrate that whole ecosystem, right? So that's the whole context behind the framework that we've sort of evolved with. And now, why is this framework important for us, right? So that's where there are a new set of gatekeepers who will evolve with this sort of audience intelligence explosion. When I mean audience intelligence, it could be AI, otherwise, right? With that new gatekeepers, can you do a scalable way of gatekeeping that and unlock value? So what do I mean by that, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the bigger problem. Most of the banks today, effectively in terms of approvals, that goes through 97, 95% of the time, it gets rejected, right? The customers gets rejected because of multiple reasons: first-party data, your income statement, your balance statement, transaction statement, and whatnot. With artificial intelligence and the way I can actually collect data from time to time, right, I can actually change the way of making sure that way up the funnel, instead of waiting for way down the funnel, way up the funnel, I could sort of score those customers to make sure that they can enable financial access in a much better way. So that's the sort of the solution that we're sort of bringing to the table. So you see some staggering numbers here. 4.2 trillion in assets, they will move to alternate banking in 2030, right? So that's the sort of the scale that we're looking at. And in terms of ad spend, again, there's a lot of stuff happening right now with the Metas and the Googles of the world, and there's a lot of money which has been spent there in terms of campaigning, et cetera, right? Is there a better way to make sure your cost of acquisitions for banking goes down so you make financial access more affordable? So that's the go-to. That's the vision, right? So that's the go-to. That's the vision where we want to sort of to understand, to see, can the audience intelligence and the artificial intelligence context and the nature of it help to get there? So that's the whole idea behind this, right? Again, if anybody has any questions, just feel free to ask. I can take pauses at different stages of my slides, okay? So next actually comes the efficiency, fundamental redesign, and scaling. So that's what I talk about in terms of how do you make sure that the cost of acquisition goes down drastically so you could actually make it much more affordable in terms of the financial access. Yeah. So here is the product that we sort of have been working on and have a few clients that we work with. We call it the Q score. So the Q score, essentially what it does, right? So what it does is way up the funnel in terms of you, because of your digital footprint that you've left. So I famously sort of use these words again and again. Credit invisibles are not digital invisibles, right? So what it means is if you're blind, or rather you don't have access to credit, it doesn't mean that you're not explorable digitally. So that's the biggest context, right, with which this entire thing is set. There is an intent to pay, and there is an ability to pay in most of the contexts, right? So what we try to do is we're saying that what is someone searching for in terms of intent, the urgency, the relevancy factor, and we sort of predict the credit worthiness even way before the funnel, right? We're not waiting for the bottom of the funnel, but way before the funnel. So that's the sort of the context where it becomes a much more efficient way to engage these customers way up. You reduce the cost of acquisitions because you cut down on your ad waste significantly, and you for sure know that you could provide financial access in a much more affordable way. Yeah? So this is a little context of how these patterns are being tracked for us, and then we sort of bring everything together to get that context there. There's an intent to it, there's a predictive credit worthiness to it, and there's an urgency factor to it. So we assign weightages. And the way we look at is, what's the future of a credit bureau, right? That's a question that we've been asking ourselves for a long time. So credit bureaus traditionally have been giving you a static score, basis your income or your transactional statements and whatnot. Is that going to be the future? The answer is no, because there's a lot of things have changed. Your income has been dynamic, your spending has been extremely dynamic, and people's aspirations have changed a lot. So which basically gives merit to connect the dots in terms of giving them the credit way up the funnel, not just using their income statement alone, but the way they're actually spending their time online, right? So that's the bigger one. So what are the 5 basic scoring factors that we use for this scoring is, number 1 is the financial literacy assessment, your sophistication in terms of financial sophistication that you bring to the table. Your intellectual complexity, that's another one. Your employment probability, so we basically pick up some signals for the employment verification, that's another one. And then the approval lookalike behavior, that's another cohorts that we actually draw. And the first-party approval data cohorts, that's another bigger one, right? So essentially, we put some weightages around these things to make sure that there is a predictive creditworthiness that you could track way up the funnel. So instead of wasting time on 100 people who might or might not get qualified for it, so you might as well reduce the cost and use it for a better dynamic way of giving them the credit and giving them the access. So that's the story behind this. Yeah. So now comes the triumvirate of intelligence, distribution, and content. So what do I mean by that, right? So intelligence, of course, there's been an explosion of intelligence across, and there's a variety of tools right now. But can we use those tools to the right use case, which is going to help us in terms of making sure there's equitable credit access? So way up in my slides, I would have started with a statement called zero credit gaps. So that's the bigger mission, right? So globally, think about incomes and the earnings patterns going forward. Can AI come in handy to make sure that there's zero credit gaps so we can uplift the entire people altogether, right? So that's the whole agenda behind what we're trying to drive at. So what this actually means is this user acquisition is sort of a middleware which sits between those things and the platform specifically. So the idea is, yes, you've got intelligence through the AI tools, the amount of data that comes to you for you to learn it much better. You train your models in an even much more better way, et cetera. Then comes distribution. So distribution through those platforms. That could be another platform tomorrow. Tomorrow, if ChatGPT decides to sort of have those ads and whatnot, right, from a targeting standpoint, that could be a separate web thing altogether. And then the content. The content is essentially what is the messaging that you're going to put across there, right? Once all the three comes together, is where we see a real potential of these things exploding. So for a lack of a better word, exploding in the right sense, both in terms of audience, both in terms of opportunities, and both in terms of economics, right? So that's the bigger picture that we wanted to sort of leave a trail with. I'm going to take a pause here. Any quick thoughts, questions, anyone? You guys have the mics, right? So run a mics? Yeah, OK. All right. OK. So again, thanks a lot for Super AI for this session. And then we've got a stall there. You can scan this QR code, visit our site to understand much better on where we are, what we do, et cetera. And thanks a lot. Thank you very much.